Welcome into the Landon Tengwall Show. Once again, I am joined by the one and only producer Jesse of the Josh Pate College Football Show. Producer Jesse, what is up, my man? Appreciate you joining me once again.
Coming off a bye week, I'm pretty sure that was good for our emotional health and a little bit of our sanity. But now we have a really big matchup coming up on tap, and sort of the final test of Penn State's backbone here these next 2 weeks, but especially this week going into Columbus.
Yeah, what do you think about this game? It feels like no one is giving Penn State a chance. Even myself, I watch the tape. I get nervous about this juggernaut, Ohio State. I've said this year, like coming into this year, there was normally there is that juggernaut that before the season of Ohio State, Bama, or Georgia, and there really wasn't one. But I think if someone has solidified themselves as that, you could maybe throw Indiana in there as well. But it's Ohio State. I mean, the defense is legit. Julian Sand has been brought along perfectly. It's been really impressive to watch Day and Hartline and kind of how they've allowed him to develop. 80% completion rate is basically unheard of. So what's kind of your overall take on this game? What type of chance does Penn State really have?
I think it's a very interesting test case. So right now, Penn State's about a 20.5 point underdog, but talent-wise, there's not too much off from this roster compared. So you have certain programs when you get to this point of the season in late October to where has this team given up? Had they just packed in their bags? I don't think Terry Smith and this team has packed their bags in. They've made mistakes to lose certain games. Obviously, we've known that. We've gone through it in a number of different circumstances, but I would still put the chances relatively low, but I'm giving them a puncher's chance. And so just quickly going through some notes that I have, Ohio State's defense is legit, like you said. Arvell Reese is one of the best linebackers in the country. Caleb Downs is one of the best safeties in the country. Their pass rush has really come along. The question about their defensive line might be there. The most points they allowed this season were 16. So that in itself is a pretty unique stat. But I do think that Ohio State hasn't really faced a playoff level test yet. And I'm not saying that Penn State's going to give them that, but they had Texas in week one, and they've gone through the Big Ten, and they dispatched Washington, who's a good football team. But you really feel like there's separation in the Big Ten, but you're not quite sure how big it is. They've beaten up on Minnesota. They've beaten up on a number of other teams. But defensively, I think that we have a chance to run the ball on them. I thought Texas had the chance to run the ball on them on week one. So it has to be a heavy dose of Katron Allen. I have three keys to Penn State keeping this game close. Katron Allen has to log 25 to 30 rushes, and they have to be productive rushes. Even if you're trailing, you can't get away from Katron and put the game on Greg Kamara's shoulders. Number two, you have to win the turnover battle. That sounds pretty simple, but in a game like this, in order to swing a 3-touchdown spread, you're going to need to get some opportunities to take some scores away from Ohio State and capitalize when they make mistakes, if they make those mistakes. And then three, you can't let Ohio State hit you with what I call the dynamite play, which is the big 40-plus over-the-top play. So their offense is pretty unique in that they're 115th in explosive plays. So that's 20-plus yards. You're like, wow, that's really low. Okay, well, if you start peeling back the onion a little bit, you'll see that they're 18th in plays of 40-plus. So they're getting the chunks, but when they get the chunks, they're hitting you over the top, and they're really hitting you hard. So you got to be able to prevent that. And so I sort of equate Ohio State as if you're going into a mixed martial arts, a UFC fight, they're not going to hit you with amazing boxing or jiu-jitsu. What they're going to do is they're an all-world wrestler. They want to get their hands on you, grapple you, take you down to the mat, and just suffocate you. And that's essentially what Ohio State has done to everyone. They're not trying to go out and put up 56 points on the scoreboard. They're going up and saying, hey, we're going to score 35. Our defense is just going to make sure you only score 10 points. We're going to be safely out in the lead. We're going to play smart. We're not going to make the turnovers. We're not going to make the mistakes. So if you're Penn State, you got to get pressure on saying, like you said, 80% of his passes, like that's a ridiculous stat. That's 7% more than the next quarterback in Power 4. Like 80% is a number that's pretty much ungodly and unheard of. And so they're 24th in pass, but they're only 71st in the run. So I really want to say, hey, beat us with the rushing attack. I know that's what Iowa did last week to us, but that was off of explosive runs. They didn't really have the sustained run game that you would really were looking for in terms of being able to beat it. So keep Ohio State contained. Try to hit some big plays of your own. Our offense right now doesn't have any facet of that. We're in the 120s in the explosive play rate and the dynamite play rate. So you got to figure out a way to do that. And whether that's Colton Nicky saying, hey, I'm going to go down on my creativity ship and sink like the Titanic, that may be a case there. But ultimately, I'm going to give us a puncher's chance. I think it's relatively low. I think Ohio State's a really good football team at not shooting themselves in the foot and making the mistakes that will hurt themselves. But if they do give you that, you got to run and take it. So heavy dose of Katron Allen, shorten the game. I think they have a good chance of covering, just because I think people are giving Ohio State a little too much credit in terms of what they're scoring and I think Penn State at least has a chance to put up 10 or 14. And I don't know if Ohio State really wants to take it up to 38 or 40. So I'd much rather go for a Penn State cover than I would a Penn State outright. So ultimately, what I want to see is, can this be a competitive game? Can we keep this within 10 points? Can we at least give a semblance that this team has not given up and there's still something to sort of put your hat on at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think you make some great points there. And the number one thing the word I'd use to describe Ohio State, not just offensively, but all around, is just efficient. They are just efficient. They get the job done, and it is done damn well. And I'm right there with you. I said that in my pregame show. Like, Kaytron Allen has to be the efficient one. He has to be explosive, and that's on the offensive line and the tight ends. And that's something that we haven't had versus Ohio State, honestly, Jesse, in years past. We haven't been able to run the ball. You look 2023 and 2024, it was tough sledding trying to get Nick and Kaytron going, and it put a lot on Drew. And now that is basically tenfold when you have Ethan Grunkmeyer in his second start ever in the shoe. You have to figure out some ways to help him, and the biggest way to do that is to run the ball well. And like you said, the turnover battle too, that's one thing that Ohio State hasn't done great on defense. I believe they're in the 90s in the FBS in terms of creating turnovers. So the part of that is because they make a lot of the people go 3 and out half the time. but that you gotta find a way to get your guys the ball in plus territory a couple times in this game for sure. Looking somewhat ahead, but really these next 2 games for Penn State, when you have at Ohio State, Indiana at home back-to-back, 1 and 2, it's kind of crazy how important it is to try to find a way to steal one of those games, and important not even just in terms of like the actual 2025 season, but trying to get to a bowl game, I guess, but like building some respect for some of those recruits out there, for the people that are going to be in the transfer portal that are looking at Penn State. How big could a win be in one of those games in terms of kind of salvaging what Penn State looks like moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's huge. They have to try to get some positive news back into the national media cycle, because everything about it's like, oh, should they have fired James Franklin? Were they wrong in firing James Franklin? Look at how they just completely collapsed in what was a championship or bust season. So I think a lot of the national media has now sort of just put Penn State into a corner and said, oh, we'll talk about them come December once the season ends and the coaching carousel begins to sort of unveil its first move or second move, and we start seeing how that entire chessboard moves in terms of the coaching carousel. So I think one of these 2 games is imperative. If they can just, an upset win would be amazing. But hey, let's go through every single game and keep it close. Let's make sure that by the 4th quarter, fans aren't tuning out. Let's make sure that the pride of a Penn State football team is being shown on the national stage. So it's a big thing for Terry Smith. I know he's going to have this team ready to go. You're playing with a backup quarterback. You're going to go face 2 of the best teams in the country, on one on the road, and then you're coming back home for Indiana. I think that's an interesting game. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in the next week or so. But you just have to believe that for them to become bowl eligible, that one of these games has to try to go their way. And I know that seems improbable right now, but people are making fun of Josh Pate's JP poll because Penn State's still in the top 20 of the power ratings. People are like, oh, and we've even acknowledged that and said drugs. That's the whole reason why Penn State is there. But there's a reason for that. That model looks at talent roster, and it is saying, hey, despite the way that you've looked and everything, you still have a top 20 talent roster on this team. So we should have won the game at Iowa last week. That would have been a good first step. But you have now 2 chances to at least just get back on the national stage and say, hey, we're not just completely going down into a nosedive. Because that was the whole point of firing Franklin was, hey, we need to pull the plane up. And so far, that hasn't happened. It looked better against Iowa. You saw a better identity of what Penn State should have been all season in terms of the run game with Kaytron Allen. So I want to see them fully pull up the nose. And even if it means hovering the plane at 100 feet off the ground, just make sure that plane doesn't hit the ground. So these next 2 weeks, I think, are imperative. And hey, let's avoid a blowout. Like, Indiana's been smoking everyone. Let's not become another victim to that. Let's not make this Ohio State game 35-7 and we don't even have a chance. Because if you start having back-to-back weeks here, we've already seen the recruitment in the 2026 class really fall apart, and it seems day by day I'm getting another notification. This 4-star has flipped. This 4-star is decommitted. And it's like, who do we have left in that class? And so you just want to find some positive news to really be able to spin it, because I feel like this Penn State team just needs a spark. They need a spark to just, hey, we're effing Penn State. Like, let's go out and play that kind of football. Like years past is years past. This is this year's team. How do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as a team that allowed the entire thing to collapse and then the next head coach is walking into nothing but smoke and rubble? I hope not. So getting a win in one of these next 2 weeks, I think, is imperative. If not, hey, be competitive, finish the season strong, and at least have some form of momentum going into 2026.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. And Terry Smith even said this. He's like, look, basically everybody in this building, players, coaches, whoever's making the smoothies, nobody knows if they're going to be here in 6 or 7 weeks. But you have to just go out there and do it for yourself. Do it for, whether you're putting tape on for another school, as a coach, as a player, or trying to go to the league. Like, you have to find a way to salvage this thing. And like you said, make sure that people still respect you and hopefully try to find a way to get a win in one of these games. You were talking about leaving something good for the next head coach. So, Jesse, let's talk a little bit about this crazy coaching carousel and these names that are getting thrown out for this Penn State head coaching gig. I'm going to throw you some names. I want you to rate it 1 through 10 in terms of how good of a hire will it be, and let's just kind of get your, like I said, you have a really good grasp of the kind of the national, coaching carousel and what these guys have done, doing a lot of study on that. So let's start out. First, we are going to go to Iowa State with Matt Campbell. What's your take on Matt Campbell?
I keep using this reference with Matt Campbell and has nothing against Matt Campbell, but Matt Campbell isn't the sexy guy. He is not the person that's going to get you a bunch of national media headlines and be like, oh, wow, what a spectacular get. But for me, like on a scale of 1 to 10, I think he's a 9. So I think Iowa State was a disaster before he got there. 6 straight losing seasons. They went 5-19 in the 2 seasons before he got there. So it took him 1 year to get the ship right. Then he's had a winning season in 7 of the next 8, including 11 wins last year. Like, that's not supposed to happen at Iowa State. The last time Iowa State won 9 games before Matt Campbell. Do you want to take a guess, Landon, what year that was?
Oh, no. Was it like around when I was born, Jesse?
Oh, it was about 90 years before you were born, 1906.
Oh,
and
my God.
Who could not remember that unforgettable season by A.W. Ristine? So just to sort of put that into context, like what Matt Campbell has done at Iowa State, he has done less with more every single year. They don't have the budget to go out and get the high-level recruits, but they find gems every single year. I mean, just look over the last 5 to 6 years. Quarterback. Rocco Becht has been phenomenal for them as a 3-year starter. But before him, people forget Brock Purdy, the guy starting for the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, he was there. You have running backs. You have David Montgomery, who's balling out for the Lions. You have Breece Hall, who's now the lead back for the Jets. They just got 2 wide receivers drafted in the 2nd and 3rd round of last year's draft. So he is able to go out and find these skilled players that aren't exactly the heralded 4 or 5-star guys, but he's really able to get the talent together. So I think he's an amazing football coach. I think he has the opportunities. He's going to probably have his pick depending on what other jobs open up. But I'm going to keep beating the drum for Matt Campbell because I think he would be a phenomenal football coach. He sort of has, like, Iowa State and Penn State have a similar identity in terms of what they want to do playing wise. So I think if you put a really good staff and you figure out the front office behind him, and you really let him loose with resources, that he's going to be one of those guys that makes the jump from a lower level P4 to the top of the P4 and does it with flying colors.
I love it. Next name, the nerd, Missouri's head coach, Eli Drinkwitz. What's your take on Drinkwitz?
I'm drinking that Kool-Aid for me. I have that as an 8 out of 10. So as an offensive-minded head coach, it's going to be a little bit different than what we got out of James Franklin. Like, do we want our head coach to be the CEO head coach? Well, if so, and you say, Drinkwitz, hey, figure out your OC, figure out your DC, but we want you to really focus in on being the CEO. Well, they've done excellent in talent acquisition over the last couple of years. So recruiting-wise, consistently top 25 at Missouri, that's not a traditional powerhouse program. There are issues there in terms of getting the resources that you need to be able to compete at the top of the SEC. And yet they're still there the last couple of years. But what I really love about Eli Drinkwitz is his ability to hit the transfer portal. They had the number 6 rated class last year, according to On3. And what I love about that class is that you found one of the top tailbacks, Ahmad Hardy, one of the top wide receivers, Kevin Coleman. You found one of the top edges in Damon Wilson, a top linebacker in Jeremiah Trotter, and of course, a quarterback that we both love in Bo Perbula. That's 5 big-time hits to add to a team of returning production that you already had. And so what happens when you hit in the portal that way is you're going to have those spike years. And you want to do the opposite of what Florida State did last year, and that's completely missing the portal, and then you go to 2-10. But I think 2026 is going to be a huge year for Penn State in the portal. And having a coach that, one, could bring some talent with him, I think a lot of that Missouri roster could sort of just be picked up and placed onto the Penn State roster if they chose to do so. But I would say he has done an amazing job at Missouri. I think he's also going to potentially be mentioned as a name at Florida. He's going to be mentioned as a name at LSU. And we're not even done with the coaching carousel yet. So there's a chance that we may not be the top option for him, but he'd be one of the top options on my board. I gave that 8.
Listen, I'm welcoming back the return of Bo Prabula to the state of Pennsylvania, Jesse. Next up, what I think has been the most rejected name by the fans in this Penn State head coaching search, Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule.
I'm giving Matt Rhule a 7, and here's why. I think Matt Rhule is an excellent football coach. I don't think you can look at his past and say what he has done at the collegiate level at Temple and then at Baylor, getting them from mediocre to honestly below mediocre programs to double-digit wins. And then people want to give him crap about the job he's done at Nebraska. Scott Frost left the cupboards pretty bare there. He really had to come in and change the coaching staff. He got Tony White, who's now at Florida State, to really get that defense going. He's now as Dana Holgerson, having that offense operating at a little bit of a better level. But he's brought in a 5-star quarterback. And so what I think, like, Brian Kelly just got fired at LSU. And the reports sort of coming out of that was, well, Brian Kelly wasn't all in here. And you have to be all in at a program like LSU. Well, guess what? If you're Matt Rhule, going back to your alma mater, you had zero concerns about what he wants to do to make that place great. That's home to him. That there's something about that in your heart of hearts to where you never have to question that. And you know that he's going to go balls to the wall. Him and Kraft are going to work together and say, hey, this is our ship now. We're going down, whether like it's me and you now, pal. Like it's we got to get this right. So I get that Rhule's like, hey, he's very similar to James Franklin. Issues against the top 10, but we've hit that before. Like, hey, yeah, you're going to have issues against the top 10 when you don't have a roster as talented as those teams that you're playing in the top 10. Give him Penn State resources, allow him time. He knows the area. I mean, he's from State High. He's going to really galvanize that local community as best as he knows how. And so I still think it's a very positive. I think he's probably still the number one person right now in the Penn State head coaching search, just because his name hasn't really been tied to any other openings. But we still have to see what happens. But I would say it's a 7 out of 10, very strong. I think all 3 of those candidates we just mentioned would be the top 3 names on my board.
It's going to be interesting when he comes to town with Dylan Raiola and company to State College once again. His return November 22nd when Nebraska comes to play Penn State. Storylines are going to be heavy in that one. Next up, Louisville head coach Jeff Brom.
Jeff Brom's a ball coach. Now, he is not going to grovel to anyone. He is not going to do what the boosters want. So that's sort of the thing of like, hey, you're getting Jeff Brom and you're getting all of Jeff Brom. But he is one of the highest rated coaches that we have in our internal system. And the job that he's done at Purdue, I mean, just look at where Purdue's at over the last couple of years. As soon as he leaves, that program just falls off a cliff. He got Purdue up to hitting its head on the upper tier of the Big Ten. Louisville has stabilized once they got him in. And he's done well hitting on transfer quarterbacks. He's done well in recruiting. So I think Jeff Brom would be a phenomenal football coach to bring in. Now, is he the right CEO sort of head coach if that's what you're still looking for? I'm not 100% sure. Is he going to be that guy that go and galvanizes the NIL people to, hey, donate, I'm going to go to your charity event. I'm going to go to your fundraising event. Maybe not. But if you want a football coach that's going to say, hey, we're going to do what we need to do to have a good defense and have an explosive offense, he's hitting the wide receiver transfer portal the last couple of years. So I really think that he's probably not, he's less sexy than everyone because he's not his agents aren't out there putting his name in a bunch of places. Like his name is organically coming up because everyone just goes back and goes, hey, we look at all these coaches around here and just look at the job this guy just keeps on doing. He's just a hell of a ball coach. And ultimately, like, if you're hiring for a head coach, sure, you want all the bells and whistles, you want all the pretty streamers and stuff, but substance is a word I keep using for this entire Penn State team. And Jeff Brom is a substance. And he is going to make sure that that program is working and getting going in a way that it needs to. It might take a year or two, but I think he's a high-level guy. I just don't know what his interest would be because there's not really any natural ties to bring him into State College.
I like that. All right, I know that. I think that'll be kind of out of left field a little bit, but if we got him, but another guy who's just a ball coach, Vanderbilt head coach Clark Lee. What is your take on him?
I think the job that Clark Lee has done at Vanderbilt and the job that that entire staff and that front office has done has been remarkable. I mean, Vanderbilt. I'm in Nashville right now, and every year it's just sort of been, do you want to go to the Vanderbilt game? I mean, we could. It'd be fun. It's a college football game. It's the SEC. I could see Georgia play them. I could see Bama come into town. And now it's like, no, they are legitimately in the CFP
Mhm.
race. So getting Diego Pavia and sort of bringing in that New Mexico pipeline in terms of Tim Beck and Diego, and really bringing that Eli Stowers has been great. So that really helped them. But that's also being strategic and going, hey, what can we go out and get and bring into here and then operate fully? So I think Clark Lee is a hell of a football coach, defensive minded, was a former DC at a bunch of different places. So I think if you can bring in that infrastructure, you can go and get Barton Simmons, the GM, you can go and get him. I think some Penn State fans will be a little timid about it, saying, are we really going back to Vanderbilt just after what we just gone through with James Franklin? But I don't think that's really, you're comparing apples to oranges in that case. So I'm going to give
Mhm.
Clark Lee a 6, but I think he's probably going to be in the running for some of more of the SEC jobs, or heck, just stay at Vanderbilt. Like if you're galvanizing this area, there's no place better to start getting your NIL going than Nashville. So I'm not sure what his interest would be, but I think that would be a heck of a hire.
Mm. Now, one guy that I've seen his name thrown out there a decent amount. I think this would be, I'd call it safe almost. Someone that's been here, Duke head coach Manny Diaz.
Listen, I love Manny Diaz and that defense and the aggressiveness that they had when he was here. Um, that said, I don't feel like that's a tremendous fit for us in that Diaz still hasn't proven to have been able to really get a program up to the top tier in college football. So he struggled at Miami, never had bad years, but just wasn't meeting their standard. And this Duke team this year, you can't blame them for their miss. They've been terrible on turnovers, and it's not Manny Diaz's job to go and handle the football for that football team. But they could have won the Illinois game. They could have won some other games this season, but they just let it out of their grasp. Like the Georgia Tech game comes to mind too. So I think he probably needs some more seasoning. And while it'd be nice to bring a familiar face back into the fold, if we're going to go and get a head coach and sort of look to import a roster, I'm not sure if Duke's a pretty upperclassman laden roster.
Mm.
So he's not bringing in a cavalcade of people behind him. So you're really looking on him to have to go in the portal and make judgments there. And if he wants to come back as a defensive coordinator, yeah, he wouldn't do it. But I don't think that as a head coach, that's the right option for Penn State right now. I'm going to give that a 4 just
Ooh.
because at least he has the ties. But I don't think that really gets you super excited as a Penn State fan. And I have to question a little bit of what he's able to go do in terms of recruiting and in the NIL space for the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I look at it as if everybody else, you kind of swing and miss on everybody else. Maybe you bring back Manny Diaz and he's a little bit of a glue guy, so to speak, because like I said, everybody loves him. But yeah, if you're swinging for the fence here, I don't know if Manny Diaz is necessarily that guy. And this would be really trying to hit a home run. We've been hearing a lot about it all over Penn State Twitter. The hottest name right now, and I don't even know if it's necessarily real, but if you look on Twitter, it seems real. Ohio State offensive coordinator, the first coordinator that we are talking about, Brian Hartline.
If there's one thing Brian Hartline can do that Penn State fans are in desperate need of, and that's go and get wide receiver talent. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Sure, bring in the wide receiver talent, but is he really going to bring in the Ohio State players into our program? Is he going to get people to transfer in behind him? And that's sort of when I'm looking at a coordinator, is you have to know you're going to hit. And that home run hire is just not out there like there was in years past with the Dan Lanning or Kirby Smart. So I would be very cautious. Like I have this at a 2. It's nothing against Brian Hartline. I think he just needs more seasoning. I mean, he's only been coaching. I don't know the exact amount of years, but it's probably less than a decade in terms of what he's been doing in terms of an on-field coach. He might have been an analyst before that. But he had a long NFL career. He's gotten into coaching. He went from a wide receivers coach. He's just now in his first year as an offensive coordinator. I think you're really trying to jump the boat a little bit in terms of getting in someone like him. And I think that's going to be true for a lot of coordinator hires. This is a unique coaching job because of the way that Franklin operated prior as a CEO, as opposed to an offensive-minded person like Sark or a defensive-minded person like a Mike Elko. Like you are looking at someone who was the main person in basically every single recruitment. He made sure to know every single person they were recruiting in the portal and on the recruiting boards. So bringing in an offensive coordinator like Brian Hartline, like one, I'm not even sure he's fully in charge of play calling with Ryan Day there. So if you're coming in and asking him, hey, we're going to ask you to do something that you haven't done at all in terms of being a head coach, I would just be very cautious. Like of doing something along those lines. I think that's sort of a Hail Mary, and Hail Marys don't work often. So there's a
Yeah.
reason there's a reason why there's some biblical terms in that play call. And that's exactly what going out and getting Brian Hartline would result in.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think that would feel a bit rushed if you were to bring Hartline in to run this thing right now, especially in the way that it is. It's not like Ryan Day taking over for Ohio State where it was there and ready. You got to come to Penn State and salvage this a little bit. So I'm with you on that one. Talking about coordinators versus hiring a proven head coach, where do you land on that? Because I mean, the stats are out there. I show yesterday talking about Hartline. I mentioned that right now, I think out of the top 12 rated teams in the AP poll, 7 of them have first-time head coaches. Last year, 8 out of the 12 college football playoff teams had a first-time head coach. So where do you land on that in terms of, like you said, there's the pros and cons of a head coach that's already a head coach. They're bringing a lot more with them. When you hire a coordinator, a Will Stein or a Hartline, there's a little bit more question marks that come with that.
Yeah, and there's already a bunch of question marks. So it's how many more variables do you want to add into the situation that we already have? And so I'm not a math major. I hate math. I love numbers. I hate letters. So when you start throwing in variables in there, I'm out. So the more variables you add into the situation, just the murkier it becomes. And I think that's exactly what you're doing with the coordinator situation. You don't have a structure in that building to just sort of pick up, place a coordinator, and go. Like LSU has that structure. Like, yeah, they're going to figure out their offensive coordinator stuff, but you have Blake Baker on defense. You have a GM already set. So a lot of the infrastructure and support staff's already there to where if you wanted to go and do something like that, it's LSU. It's a huge job. They probably wouldn't, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable about that. But you're going to have that coordinator come in and probably make 2 new coordinator hires or already have to work with Jim Knowles. So already now you're limiting yourself to, hey, we're probably looking for an offensive-minded guy if we're not getting rid of Knowles. And then you're looking at the entire support staff, but then you're looking at rebuilding recruiting. And I think that's really, like I said, Penn State is a unique case. I don't mean to keep harping on it, but I think it's sort of the underlying underbelly of this entire conversation in that our recruiting class is falling apart in 2026. Like keeps going down day after day. We're seeing people decommit. And so is a coordinator going to be able to come in and stabilize that? Is he going to be able to go in and pick the right people? Was he the person in charge of recruiting from the program that he was coming to? So I think that's just really difficult. And you look at some of the guys who are out there with proven head coaching experience. I'd rather go pluck a Matt Campbell. I'd rather go pluck an Eli Drinkwitz because there's proof of concept there. There's proof of performance. Whereas a coordinator, yes, you might hit a home run and reach a new ceiling and it might all work out great. But there's the opposite of a ceiling is a floor. And I think if you make the wrong coordinator hire, all of a sudden now it feels like the floor is already starting to wobble a little bit. You're hearing the creaks. That could be the thing that just puts the program through the floor. Then all of a sudden now we fire James Franklin, who was a beacon of sustained success. And if you make one wrong coordinator hire, it could become even worse. And all of a sudden now we're stuck in the C to D level tier of the Big Ten going, what the heck just happened over the last 2 years? So I think finding a head coach with experience should be high up on the list because this is Penn State. We shouldn't have to go out like if Pat Kraft has a coordinator that he has circled and he has vetted him and he ends up making that hire, I'll get behind it. But I need to see what led to that decision, what led to that process, because there's only so much that I can glean from being a national person and looking at all these different schools and getting little nuggets here and there. And a lot of the coordinator stuff is like, hey, is this guy actually calling plays? How much is the head coach really impacting this? So there is a lot of different circumstances that from a naked eye, we can't tell. So if Pat Kraft thinks that there's a coordinator, that's correct. You're going to go down with that ship or you're going to go up into the sky and flying high. But if you miss, man, that's a huge miss. I'd rather find someone who could stabilize the floor and then allow the resources of Penn State and the fan base to be like, hey, all right, we knew that you're going to have a down year. 2026 was already scheduled to be a down year. So, hey, get it together, take that 1 year, rebuild, bring in the people that you need, get a fresh recruiting class, and then let's hit the ground running. Hopefully it's in 2026, but if not by 2027, because if you're struggling in 2027, Penn State fans are going to be in the ringer and not in a good way.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Like Pat Kraft, his career kind of rides on this coaching hire. Can he hit it out of the park with this, or is it going to kind of fall flat on its face? So I guess one of my questions is, and I've seen people talk about this, can Pat Kraft wait Can he wait for a college football playoff head coach? And I don't know if there necessarily is one out there that's going to end up in there that Penn State could even find a way to get. But if you're Pat Kraft, is that something? Can you wait till almost January to pluck a coach from a really good team?
I don't think Penn State can be afforded that time in December to forego what they need to do in the portal and what they need to do to try to potentially get the recruiting class stabilized. So signing day is going to be in December. The portal opens up early in January. So basically, if you make the semifinals, you will still be playing football as a transfer portal opens. And just because of how Penn State's roster is constructed, you have so many upperclassmen that are about to leave. You are going to have portal players leave. So there's going to be a dramatic amount of churn, and you don't know what your 2026 class is. That churn is going to result in likely half of your roster probably being turned over. And so whoever steps into this position should probably be there right as the regular season ends. So a lot of the coaches that we talked about, with the exception of maybe Clark Lee, aren't really in the driver's seat for a college football playoff spot. And I think, like, hey, Florida might be able to wait. LSU might be able to wait. Like, if they want Lane Kiffin and he goes to the CFP and they say, no, that's our guy, we're going to wait for him. Okay, they have that ability to, because of the infrastructure that's in those programs. That's not just dependent on the head coach. Penn State, a lot of it was dependent upon James Franklin. So I don't think they have the ability to wait. I think you need to go and attack the portal. You need to go and address certain issues. You need to make sure that if you are a head coach leaving your team, that you have the ability to bring whatever pieces from that team that you want over to Penn State. So I don't think that there's any chance that they could wait. And even if you were, so say like, hey, in a perfect world, Lane Kiffin, well, if just say like, oh, Lane says, yeah, I'll take the job, I'll leave early. Like, well, then he's outcasting his entire team. So no coach is going to leave a CFP team. And I don't think you can afford to wait for the CFP to really get wrapped up. You want to get a head coach in here and at least give him a little bit of runway. Because if you give him no runway and he's starting, and you're going to really look at 2025 and be like, oh, wow, this might be a tank season, just sort of seeing what we have. And that's not any sort of terminology you should ever use in college football. So I think you need to get a coach in there as early as December as you can and try to get what you can and salvage the recruiting class, but then put yourself in a really good position to be able to attack the portal this year. So I don't think they can afford to do that.
Yeah, and when we're talking about which coaches Penn State wants to hire, and I think there is the other factor that these coaches have other decisions out there. There's a lot of jobs opening up. Obviously, LSU opened up, Florida. There's Florida State. There's a couple other on the horizon of possibly opening up. Where do you see this Penn State head coaching opening like ranked as far as a head coach wanting to actually come here?
I still think Penn State's a high-level job. It's one of the best 12 jobs, I would say, in the country, because you have the full buy-in. You're going to get the full NIL allotment. You're going to get the fan base behind you. And I mean, James Franklin's been saying it for years. I need alignment. I need alignment. And they got the alignment. The alignment is here now. So you look at a coach being like, hey, James Franklin sort of went through a long process of getting alignment here, and it's now there. So I can just go and sort of drop in, and I have the ability to go and get whatever coordinator I want. The Jim Knowles hire was evidence of that. We'll spend the money. We're going to do whatever we need to in NIL to get better. We're not probably at that 1A tier in NIL, but the potential to get there is there. So right now, I would have us tentatively third. LSU is the best job on the market by far. LSU is going to be able to go and get whoever they want, most likely. I would still put Florida as slightly above us, just because there's more. That roster is a really young roster. They're going to have a lot of talent coming back. They haven't had a bunch of recruiting class hits. So whoever's the coach there is going to go into a really good situation. And then I would put Penn State third, but I do want to add a caveat to that. And people with the coaching carousel. So like, yeah, Florida State may open up. Auburn may open up. You can make an argument which job among that is better, but which coaches are going to take which jobs? Do we just have something out of right or left field to where a really good program, they decide, or LSU goes to decide to poach a really good program. All of a sudden now you have another blue blood or preeminent program that's opening up. That could drop you down to fourth. Well, who are they hiring? So like there's a cascade that goes, there's a effect here of just because these jobs are open now, someone has to fill them. Someone has to fill those jobs. And where does Penn State fall in that pecking order? So I think a lot of the coaches right now, we're tentatively third, but that could continue to decrease to fourth or fifth. And if you start falling down that ladder more and more, that may put you out on a Drinkwitz. That may put you out on a Matt Campbell, to the point to where that's why I feel like Rule's the comfortable and safe choice, is that his name's not really being brought up anywhere else. I think his choice really is, hey, do I want to stay at Nebraska, who also has a lot of good resources, and there's no guarantee that he would leave, or do I want to go to Penn State? So I feel like that's why a lot of people are really zeroing in on Matt Rule. But I think ultimately we're third, but we have the ability to sort of keep falling down the ladder. And then I mean, there's going to probably be as many as 15 P4 openings this year. And when you start to really look at it, just because of our all in or bust year this year, is that head coach is not walking into the most talent laden roster. They don't have an intact 2026 recruiting class. They haven't had the proven portal hits. Like outside of Amari Campbell, I can't say that any player for us in the portal has really hit in the last 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but like AJ Harris, maybe like you can look at that, but he hasn't played great this year. Like outside of Amari Campbell, we haven't hit in the portal. So we don't have that proof of concept that, hey, you can come here as a portal player and improve your draft stock. If anything, you look at the receivers, Trevor Pena was probably going to be a high level, like maybe a third or fourth round pick. Now he might be lucky just to be an undrafted free agent. And you start looking at down the line at some of these transfers that are coming in, and it's just not working out for them. So Penn State has the potential to be one of the best jobs. Right now, you're sort of buying low if you're a head coach saying, hey, if you give me 2 years, or if you give me, if I can really hit, play the portal roulette and I hit on my number and we're going to do really well. But I don't think that Penn State fans should think that, hey, we are the top job. I think you're close to it. You have the ability to become the top job. But just because of the sort of extenuating circumstances right now, you're not. You're probably number 3.
Yeah, it's going to be a interesting 5, 6, 7 weeks,
Not you. Jeez. I thought you were better than
Oh, no, I didn't mean to do it, Jesse. It's good. No, it's going to be crazy. I'm sure we're going to have a million different names thrown at us, and hopefully Penn State and Pat Kraft can find a way to make the correct choice here for Penn State, because like I said, I think Pat Kraft's career is on the line with this hire, so he's got to hit this one out of the park. Producer Jesse, any final words? I'm sure we will have you back on very shortly, but you got anything else for us?
Be safe this Halloween. Halloween's a fun time of year, but it's a spooky time of year. It's a spooky time of year right now to be a Penn State football fan. So let's just make sure that we have don't get too much sugar into our systems before Saturday. It's a noon kickoff. But ultimately, my message is going to stay the same. Support the program no matter what happens. This is one of the best college football programs in college sports. So even if there's a down year, even if next year's a down year, don't prevent that from being your stop at supporting, because the potential's there. And all it takes is one spike year. I mean, just look at what Kurt Cignetti did to Indiana. There are so many circumstances where, hey, you make the right coaching hire and all of a sudden you just explode again. So we might be in a little bit of a lull right now. And I hope that this 2025 team can really go and finish the season strong. And 2026 hopefully is better. But sometimes patience is a virtue. And right now I'm just being cautiously optimistic. So I want everyone to be safe on Halloween and not get scared out of your britches.
There we go, from producer Jesse himself. We appreciate you coming on and joining us. We will have you on again shortly. Everybody, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe. Peace.